All right, with the recording in progress, I will go ahead and call to order this October 10th, 2023 License Ordinance Committee. I see that we have Alder Jeffrey Jackson and Alder Jennifer Cole here. The first order on the agenda is comments from citizens present. And I will ask if anyone that's here would rather speak when their agenda item is presented. Can you let me know now? I'm assuming everyone present would rather speak when their agenda item is up. If anyone would rather speak beforehand, please raise your hand. Or I see we have a caller too. So if you want to just state that you'd like to speak now, caller, let us know. All right, I don't see any hands. So we will, anyone present, if you would like to speak when your agenda item is up, just raise your hand when your item comes up, please. All right, so we move on to, sorry. Oh, did anyone want to speak? All right, I think we're good. All right, moving on to approval of the minutes from the September 12th, 2023 meeting. Does anybody have any revisions for the minutes? No, Jennifer, you're shaking your head. I'm scrolling through. All right, with no amendments presented, we will approve the minutes from the September 12th meeting as accepted. Moving on to licenses and permits. The first thing we have is the application for a combination Class B beer and Class B liquor reserve license by Beloved Proof LLC, doing business as The Social at Middleton Market, 7622 Lisa Lane, Madison, Wisconsin. Ashley Allen, agent.
Yep, and I have this added on. It was provided to me by Lori. I think that's them present here as well to speak to it. As far as my involvement in it, the background check on the agent, there's no issues.
Okay.
So it goes from there, but I think the only, or I shouldn't say that, one of the issues that needs to be addressed is the definition of the premise. And the maps were included, but they're relatively vague, so I don't know if there's any questions there. And then I think Matt might have some input perhaps on any of that.
I'm trying to see, do we have, oh shoot. I'm trying to see, I don't see everyone. I'm trying to figure out my screen. Is there anyone from Beloved Proof on the call?
Yes, we're here. Sorry, okay. Wasn't sure when to pipe in.
That's what I thought. I was looking for a hand raise and I didn't see one, so I figured you guys.
Yeah, we're here. We're here.
Okay. So, Matt, can you speak a little bit to the issue of the premise?
Well, so yeah, I mean, this is a little unusual. I mean, certainly unlike anything that we've approved here in Middleton before. You know, the main thing here that we've got going on is we're going to have an area that's where it's anticipated that alcoholic beverages will be able to be taken, consumed, and served. I don't know if there'd be wait staff, but technically they, you know, under a license and licensing this whole area, you know, that could include actual wait staff and service there as well. And then carved out would be these vending areas. So the food vendors that would be operating would not be subject to the license, but the areas where people may be eating could be. And so you'll have separate businesses, and there'll be a little bit of an overlap here. Now, that in and of itself isn't terribly concerning. You know, the important thing is that wherever alcohol beverages are going to be consumed by members of the public, that the the operator, the holder of the license, alcohol license, has control over those areas. And so that I think we have satisfied here. That's not the big concern. The trouble that I am seeing is a combination of a couple things, and it all revolves around underage persons. And that is, the size of the area, and the fact that unless you meet one of the specific statutory exceptions, an underage person cannot be on the premises. So one of the exceptions that this looks like it could be sort of similar to is for businesses operated primarily as a restaurant, and typically primarily as a restaurant means 50% or more of your gross revenues come from food sales. Now, I don't know if you incorporated all the food vendors that were there, let's say all the food vending operation stalls were occupied, and let's assume that enough food would be sold there. It would on one view be similar to as if this was all owned by the same vendor, but the way the statute is, it's not clear that you can combine these separate businesses for the exception. Now, this part of the statute, it's not clear that you can't either, and so I think there's got to be to use that exception, you need to look at statutes as a whole, and then also look at the practical considerations of how you monitor that with many different restaurants operating. But at the end of the day, you have to have some way to be sure that either you meet this exception, or you have a way of clearly monitoring whether there are underage folks that are on the premises. Now, again, the way this is intended to operate in the area, I don't know if this is going to be a huge magnet for that kind of thing. But by the same token, I think there's reason to be discomforted if you've got a situation where it's very easy for underage people to be on a premises that they're not supposed to be on, and there's really no monitoring going on, and it just kind of being a look the other way sort of situation. Then, of course, with the size of the thing, you also have just underage on premises possibly consuming, and so I think you want to know something about the business plan and how many employees are going to be, and what the plan is just for monitoring the entire premises from that perspective. So that's kind of where sort of my unease and unanswered questions sit.
Okay. In a follow-up to that, how do places like the Milwaukee Public Market or the proposed Madison Public Market, how do they handle something like this? Because it seems like a similar situation, right, where you have.
And I tried to look into that. I don't know what the plans are for the Madison Public Market. Frankly, as I sit here, I couldn't even tell you that they are planning on having alcohol served there. Maybe they are. I don't know. But the Milwaukee Public Market, I don't know if that's the same thing as the 3rd Street Market. Yeah. Okay. So we're also talking about the same thing. I tried to find out. And that's certainly the closest analogous situation here. That's certainly the example that made me quickly comfortable with the idea of having vendors and excluding them from the premises description. But how they deal with the underage and from the licensing perspective, I'm not sure. I have a message into the city attorney's office in there, but trying to find who deals with those things. It's just and certainly in the time period I wasn't able to uncover that. So online, they say they allow during school days, they say, nobody that's under 18 is allowed on the premises, but then after 8 or 9, you have to be 21. So that tells me somehow that either they're allowing underage people on the premises normally, and that they see some exception. And my feeling is that it has to be it seems to me the most likely is some way of working under the restaurant exception, but I don't know exactly their reasoning or the structure in how they monitor that, because you need to be able to continually demonstrate, even if you're able to take these other businesses' revenue and say the entire area is being operated primarily as a restaurant. I'm open to considering that as an option, but I don't know how they actually do that, or if that is the exception that they're relying upon.
Well, I can tell you, we met with a sign company today, designating all of the areas, entrances, the exits that would require appropriate signage to make sure anyone has to be 21 or older to enter unless they're accompanied with a legal guardian. In addition to that, we have 2 half walls kind of bordering the sides of the wall to designate the difference in the area. And I'm actually in talk with Karin about having a very large, oh my God, what is it called? Curtain, so to speak, to block off a part of the market so that people can see the bar more visually clear, and that like my bartenders and myself behind the bar can see all the way down the market to make sure who is of age. In addition to that, I plan on having 6 to 7 full-time bartenders working on my employment team. Part of their duties will be kind of going back and forth behind the bar. There is no intent yet for them to work as servers for the more common areas down the road, but I think that's something that can be revisited upon. I have always personally operated as a bar manager with the motto of you look under 40, immediate card. And I know that there have also been discussions on the table about potentially using different color wristbands to designate those folks who are of age for drinking, making sure there's different colors on different days so nobody's doing any kind of tricksy behavior to, follow through or pick up a pal's wristband. So yeah, we do have some options on the table to explore.
So yeah, Parker Conover. So I'm the attorney working on this licensing, and that was Ashley Allen, the agent and owner of the bar. And this is Lynn, who used to own Babe's Bar in Madison, and is doing some consulting as we kind of try to get this up and going. So I just want to thank Matt. First of all, he came out actually to the public market at the end of last week, and I think it was helped to kind of tangibly see it and get a sense of what this is going to look like. So I think that he touched on, right, the 2 issues. We have the issue of alcohol consumption for under 21 folks, and we're certainly going to be vigilant about that in terms of carding, and as any other bar you hope would be, to prevent underage consumption. The I think one that maybe gives Matt a little bit more consternation is underage presence on the licensed premises. So I just want to be very transparent and clear. So the licensed premises that we applied for is going to be the bar area. So if you're looking at the map, that's in the top left, but then also include the common areas. So the reason we've done the larger licensed premise is so that, like at the Middleton public market, I can go up to the bar, I can get carded, get my drink, but then I can take my beer to the common areas as I get a taco, as I get a burger, or as I get something from one of the other food vendors. So that's the reason for the larger licensed premises. It also includes the patio. That's, I believe, the last page of the application. But our at the moment, we are the only vendor, the bar in the market hall. So those places that are highlighted out, which are not part of the licensed premises, are currently open. At the moment, that offers, as I think Matt would attest, of sight lines across the entire 12,000 feet. It's very easy to tell who's coming in and who's coming out, and to quickly identify and card them if need be. And as other vendors fill in, Matt alluded to this, we are hopeful that we could revisit the restaurant exception. But with that said, you know, the restaurant exception would allow us to have unaccompanied minors on the licensed premises. But that's not really our goal. You know, we aren't shooting to have unaccompanied under 21 folks kind of flooding or coming to the market. If it would, you know, ease some of our kind of administrative responsibility, maybe we would revisit that once we had vendors and we wanted to possibly meet that exception that Matt described. But again, our you know, the focus here is families, which are accompanied minors, but then also adults. I think especially at night for Packers games, things to that effect, and being able to provide that kind of atmosphere. So again, I want to chime into that and talk to that. I see that one of the committee members has a hand raised, and I don't want to monopolize any of the microphones.
Yeah, thanks. Jen, did you have a question?
Yeah, to Matt's point about trying to find how similar setups have done this, I think locally, you know, right, Madison Public Market not yet available necessarily. Garver Feed Mill may provide example. I know they cordoned off where alcohol is allowed with signage.
Yeah, I looked at Garver as well, and I mean that does present some challenges, particularly in space with Ian's, and there's not great clear definition, but there are specific, you know, Ian's has its own licensed areas. There's the separate thing, and then there are other spaces that are clearly more walled off. So yeah, I didn't find Garver to be a very helpful example.
I also wonder how, yeah, I wonder how Festival Foods on East Washington has their alcohol sales, because they have space upstairs that has a bar. It's not 21 and over, strictly up there. You're not allowed to take alcohol obviously into the store, but I'm not sure how that is handled. Just some thought. And I guess my question about the schematics is I'm not seeing where the beverage service is.
Yeah, so if we're looking on page, I believe 8 of 9. So if you see the top left, it's got patio and highlight. Or I guess it's not the top left. I guess it's the bottom left if you're looking at it in landscape.
Yep. Okay.
So on the bottom left, I'm sorry.
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, so on the bottom left is the bar area. So I'm turning it so it's, you know, like this.
Okay.
So the top left is bar area. So I don't know how to describe it, but that kind of S shape, if you will, on the top left is the actual bar front. And the lines, the vertical and horizontal line kind of perimetering that out are half walls. So that'll be kind of the bar area, if you will, with chairs, tables, and things to that effect. And then the rest of the market hall is, excluding the vendors, which are, you know, highlighted out, is a common area which will have tables, chairs, stools, etc. So places, again, that we're hopeful, and again, this is, we were intentional about the licensed premises, and we're hopeful that you could take your beer or other, you know, alcohol beverage from the bar and then go to the other vendors and order food if you wanted it, and not just be closed off by that bar area. And I can't speak 100% confidently to how Milwaukee Public Market does it. My recollection is that there's an ordinance, there's an exception to the open container ordinance, and that there are licensed premises within the public market, but the common areas are technically open. But it's not an issue because there's no open container ordinance in effect for that premises. You know, one, we didn't want to come and ask you for an ordinance change just for us, although if you want to consider it, we would be happy to discuss it. And two, we were concerned that when you have an unlicensed premises as the common area and you have an open container exception, that would, and Matt, please correct me if I'm misunderstanding, would actually allow people to carry out their own alcohol beverages into those common areas, and they could drink at the market as long as they weren't on our licensed premises. And that gave us some consternation from certainly a liability perspective, and just from a that's not really how a business, I think, generally operates. In that, oh yeah, just bring your own beer. We've got a bar to this side, but you know, do whatever you want in the common area. And we definitely had some, you know, general public safety concerns about that happening, about overconsumption on the premises, and things to that effect that would be outside of our control. You know, it really is our intention to have very clear oversight and control of the entire market hall, so that we don't run into those public safety issues, and again, so that we can have an effective business model.
I think one thing that you can see, I'm Lynn Haker, I own Babe's Grill and Bar for 30 some years, other restaurants, but I am now actually working for Vitens Golf Land. And I think there's an example there that the city of Madison has allowed us to drink anywhere on the premise. We use wristbands, we use different colored wristbands for every day of the week. Whoever is having alcohol is automatically wristbanded. It's a very family-oriented facility. There's a lot of people that come and take their kids to mini golf and have a beer while the kids are playing mini golf. Although it's not exactly the same, this premise that, or the area that the bar is going to be in does have the half wall surrounding it. So it is kind of a guided, gilded area that you can keep an eye on right now, and anybody that leaves and was to go outside that area would be wristbanded, so that anyone walking in could see that they have been carded and they are of legal drinking age, 21. So it's something that's kind of new to the area, but I've seen it work at Vitens, which is amazing, and it works pretty well.
That's a really good example. I hadn't thought of Vitens, but we spend a lot of time there, and that's a good and comparison. And is that something that you're open to then? Is pursuing something in that vein, at least?
Well, I think what we're doing here, I mean, I think there is a specific exception that applies to Vitens, and this is part of the problem, and I was kind of alluding to this before, is that I think in a practical sense, you can see how this is very similar to things that are just allowed, but we've got a list of specific exceptions. And I mean, you can see, well, you know, there's just many instances where, well, this looks very similar to that. Why isn't this allowed here? And well, you know, that's just kind of what the legislature has left us with. So I you know, that's part of the reason why I struggle, particularly about the underage on presence, because there is so many exceptions to this, and this looks very similar to, you know, different ones that could apply, but I mean, so far it doesn't actually fit one that I can see, and so it just becomes a matter of, you know, knowing that, and the city's position on, you know, how comfortable it is with it being close, and knowing that, you know, this may be an area where you have underage people on the premises, and they shouldn't be, and not that that's directly causing any problems, but you know, it's always a little difficult when you have a place where, you know, a specific law is sort of just being openly violated, and then what does that do to us when, you know, we have problems, or just know what's happening.
The application as it is for the combination Class B beer and Class B liquor prevents anyone from being on the premises that's under 21?
Correct.
Okay.
Unaccompanied.
Unaccompanied, yes, right.
Okay. So if we were to approve this currently as it stands, as the only proprietors in the space right now, and then should food halls open there, could they reapply for a restaurant exception?
Well, that's where we'd have to do a bit more research and see whether it's possible to use food sales by an entity that's different than the licensee, to count towards the space being operated primarily as a restaurant. Like I said, I haven't ruled it out. And it does seem like you could parse the language. And, well enough, but yeah, we haven't come to any conclusions about that.
And I guess I would want to know a little bit more. So you guys currently own the space? You're leasing it from somebody else? Is that?
So we lease the space.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just thinking how that works with separate leases within the same space and who covers what. I mean, there's got to be some framework.
Correct. So sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. So right now, our lease, the premises for the lease would be contiguous with the licensed premises. So on, like, for example, on page 8 of the license, the map we have, so that highlighted out spot that if you look closely, it says burger, taco, noodle underneath. That is not part of our licensed premises, and it is not part of our lease.
Okay.
So the vendors that fill those spots would have leases just for those areas.
Okay.
And just as kind of an aside, and this may come in future discussions with Matt about the restaurant exception, is under the current lease, we as a Beloved Proof, the vendors that go in there would likely end up being either subcontractors of Beloved Proof, because we would have approval over them of who's going in there, and we would also be the general manager of the entire market hall, which I think would be helpful to the restaurant and also just our general oversight of the space considerations. I don't think there was, I think I said and, but that was really the only point there.
Well, and that sounds to me, if they become a subcontractor, doesn't that, I think that would, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but with the restaurant exception, would that?
I think it helps. I think statute's fairly statute doesn't say, oh, if they're subcontracted, we're good. But again, I would certainly defer to your guys' counsel on that, and I would hope that it would, but I would obviously defer to Matt.
Okay, if I may, just in the interest of kind of wrapping this up, Matt, did you have something else to add?
Well, I mean, my only other thought here is, I mean, because we've got several different options here, and I know that this is not an option that the licensee is really looking for, but as an alternative to, I mean, because the other thing I'm always cautious about is once you've issued a license for a licensed premise, it's easier to expand a premises than it is to scale it back. And so, I mean, I certainly, I seem to hear at least some interest on the part of the committee to exploring this whole thing, and I'm interested in seeing how I can go and see the full vision realized, but I understand there are also some business considerations, and they need some kind of license to move forward. So one alternative that I think may be worth considering is starting with a more limited premises description to the patio and that bar area, and maybe even a portion of the seating area, because they're maybe immediately adjacent to it, but keep it more limited initially until we figure out what the whole leasing situation is, what how, if we're going to apply the restaurant exception, how we would be able to monitor the gross receipts and everything, or if we come up with some other idea. I mean, eventually somebody's got to be able to tell us how the 3rd Street Market actually operates.
So if I may, that was going to be my suggestion, is that, and I put this as a question to the applicant, in that if we were to defer this in order to get a little bit more information about the future of a restaurant exception, starting where we are, and any sort of modifications to come later, doing a bit more research on what other applicants have done, or what other situations might fit the situation. Just do a little bit more legal research from the city side as far as what possibilities are there. What kind of time frame, if we were to defer this for a month for that, is that something that you guys can work with?
So my request, my response to that would be a request that we would have a special committee meeting prior to this month, the last council meeting of this month. So the goal really is to be open in November. I understand that puts you
Oh.
guys on a little bit, I mean, not November 1, just to be clear.
Yeah.
But hopefully before, you guys would meet again in November, and then we would get kicked to probably the end of the month for council, and then all of a sudden it's December and the holidays. So, that would be kind of my request and response, that if we could end up on the city council's agenda for this month, that would be exceptionally helpful, or at least, council meets the first Tuesday and third Tuesday, right?
First,
Yeah.
So either the next one this month or the first Tuesday in November.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's 5 Tuesdays in October, so we meet next on the 17th, and then we don't meet again until November 7th. So that,
Yeah, so it would require a special meeting of this committee.
right, so that would be something, and other alders on the call, if you have any, oh, Jen, you have your hand up.
No, continue on your train of thought.
Okay, if that's something that we would be open to, I would be open to that, but we wouldn't be able to get you anything until the 7th of November from the council at the earliest.
And we would certainly be fine with that. If that was gonna help you guys, come to a conclusion here, right, I mean, our goal right now is we would like to have the full licensed premises. That's our goal, and to get you guys comfortable with that. I guess to respond a little bit to, the smaller licensed premises is, we would accept that. We are willing to take what the committee and the council are willing to give, first and foremost. But then we're gonna run into some issues. I don't know about issues, but then it just becomes a matter of not maybe monitoring who's on the premises, but then who's trying to leave the premises with an open beer. And then, so it becomes the inverse. Is there less risk in that? Possibly, from a licensee perspective, I see it as fairly equal risk, but certainly defer to your guys' judgment on that, and the police's judgment on that. So I think that would be kind of where we're at, is we want to get you comfortable with it. Anything we can do to demonstrate, kind of our vigor and commitment to, being compliant with both state statute and any direction given from this committee and the council. I hope that is apparent at this point. And that we would just ask to be able to make that November 7th council meeting, if we are going to push this to a special meeting.
Okay. And obviously this was just one option I was throwing out there, Jen.
Of course.
Yeah, so I think that's more to my point of wondering if the alternative of the reduced size to get you all to meet your opening timeline. And as Matt said, right, easier to expand than to retract where the alcohol would be allowed on the premises. Especially with, it sounds like the food vendors are not necessarily lined up yet.
Yes, they are not. It makes it easy to see across the whole market currently.
But so that as that fills in, then and allows Matt more time for understanding how this applies to advise us as council members in this decision making. I just wonder if that alternative is what would get you to your opening.
So it certainly would. We would certainly open with, again, whatever licensed premises this committee and the council, ultimately is comfortable with. I guess maybe my question to the committee at this point would be, is there a concern? Let me backtrack for a moment. At this moment, we do not meet an exception. We don't meet one of the exceptions for underage folks. We do not. We're not claiming that. We certainly don't want to push that. So is there a concern from the committee that we are not going to be able to monitor whether there are unaccompanied underage folks on the premises?
then the fact that I don't think I would have a concern personally. This is just coming from my very basic
course.
understanding of what your business is. It's a bar, right? If you're not doing anything
Yep.
else but serving alcohol at this point, you are a bar. So anyone that's coming in is going to be enjoying your services as a bar.
Yep.
You're not gonna be having, if somebody underage comes in, they can't be served, they're gonna leave. So I don't see where that's an issue at this point.
Yeah, from my perspective, the trick is, yeah, not how you would operate without the vendors there. It's as the vendors come in and we've already got a defined premises. And so it's that transition, and now all of a sudden we have a defined premises, we have vendors selling food that people under 21 may want to partake in, and then all of a sudden we're dealing with that, but we've already given you the premises, and then the only way to pull back the premises is to either catch you in violation and threaten to take your license, or you voluntarily do it, and that's not the position we want to find ourselves in.
Well, I guess I would just respond to that I don't think that would require you to pull back our premises. So we are either gonna operate under no exception, which is what I'm proposing right now, and that would not change once we got food vendors. We still would not allow unaccompanied under 21 folks on until we came back to Matt or this committee and asked to be subject to the exception. And it's my understanding, and I guess I hope Matt agrees, I think that you could issue a license with a condition that if we intended to operate under that exception for the unaccompanied under 21, that we would have to come back to this committee and the council in order to exercise, I don't want to call it a right, but I guess to operate under that exception. I think that would be a very fair license condition.
So, yeah, and then in response to that, I guess then the main remaining concern is do you feel you got enough information that you're comfortable that while no underage are allowed, that there's a sufficient plan in place to monitor that? Can you is there enough staffing? Can you see enough of the licensed premises in order to feel comfortable that that's not going to be violated just by virtue of the inability to effectively monitor it?
Exactly, and that I think goes back to my question a couple of minutes ago. Is if the committee is uncomfortable or has any questions about how we're going to monitor that, then we'd be happy to discuss more. Talk about that, get you comfortable with it. But if that isn't necessarily a concern of the committee, then we are very happy to operate under the no unaccompanied 21 folks and have that be a condition on our license until we work with Matt or otherwise, go through a process that demonstrates that we are going to meet that exception at some point. But until then, we're very happy and keen just to operate as any other bar would.
Has anybody else actually seen the market?
Not yet.
I believe we've invited everybody out, and I think everyone wanted to defer until after this. I completely understand and respect that. Didn't want to put you on the spot. I promise no free drinks will be served or anything that would, be incredulous or make you, question anyone's personal or professional ethics. But we certainly welcome anyone to come out. Shoot me an email, shoot Nancy an email. We can do it individually as a group, assuming that we noticed it as a meeting. For open meetings laws, but otherwise, please come see the space. We would be glad to have you.
And I guess the question about monitoring, I think, is also a public safety question. I don't know if you guys would have any concerns about monitoring for underage service, given what you know from the application and everything.
Yeah, and I have not been out to the premise, so it's kind of tough to answer that question. It's set up as a bar. So, we have other bars in the city that are good at monitoring underage patrons. So I don't see it as a huge concern from police department standpoint, but, I guess we'd have
no more than anything.
Yeah. Yep.
And then unfortunately, it looks like Jeffrey dropped off because this is in his district. So I was wondering if he had any concerns. I don't know if that's his cell phone number there, but if he has any concerns, I would invite him just, and I believe he lives near there, so, but I would really like to see something go into this space. And I think that having the license approved will encourage food vendors to come. So I would really like to move this forward for you all if we can. Jen, if I, how do I want to do this? I mean, I would like to have some answers on the restaurant exception. I am not as concerned about the scaling back the premises. But I may be also reading the map wrong. And I haven't seen the space. So I don't know if what are your thoughts, Jen, then on approving something now versus deferring until the end of the month with more information?
I mean, I think I just want to make sure that there is comfortability with this. And when I hear from our city attorney that there's some consternation about how exceptions apply and not having necessarily a response from how other venues have done this type of thing given the parameters that we have in state law, or don't have, about these. So I'm fairly comfortable with the idea of operating the premise as a bar. I do see, though, as you start opening food stalls, that it shifts and changes it, and so would quickly need to be revisited. And also, I think, right, having a public market and it's only 21 and over, unless accompanied, is also something that, like, I don't know is the best for business. So yeah, I'm really waffling here.
We were to approve a license with the requirement that should any food vendors come in, or if any business expansion happens, they have to revisit. Does that require is that just something that we would add to the license tonight, or does that require a different licensing process?
No, well, I think that option was suggested just to be clear that so we know that they are never going to just assume for themselves the ability to operate under an exception, that we would formally recognize the exception, and that's all fine. I mean, I think the other thing too that we've sort of talked about some of the things that they plan on doing, but I don't also feel like we've got maybe a real clear list of what conditions we might want to have to be, ensure what really is going on, and what we know there is going to be in terms of monitoring.
Just a question on that, I guess, are there conditions on monitoring that you would want to put on us that are not conditions on other bars' licenses?
Possibly. I mean, I don't know we have any other bars that really are this big, or that essentially have sort of other businesses that operate within their confines physically like this, that sort of seems to be maybe more inviting to underage folks than might otherwise be. So I think these likely would be different than anything else we've got, but this is a very different business as well. And I don't necessarily think they need to be long and difficult, but I think we do need to, I think, have some sense that there's always going to be sufficient staffing, and frankly, I also don't want to put something that's so onerous, particularly while you're opening and before things are there, that that don't make sense early on for you. So I think they need to be carefully tailored. I just fear that maybe as we sit here right now, that we don't necessarily have the right language. And frankly, I mean, I do think it would be helpful for the committee. I don't know how you two feel about it, if you feel differently, but I think understanding how this is going to work, I think it would be helpful to actually go out and see the space and see what it is. It is very different being in the room than it is looking at a two-dimensional drawing, and for both better and worse. I mean, it gave me a better understanding of what we're looking at.
Okay, if I may, I'm gonna make a motion that we defer this application for the combination Class B beer and Class B liquor license for Beloved Proof doing business at the Social to a special L&O meeting to be held sometime between today's date and the date of the first council meeting in November, which would be November 7th. And that will be my motion, and that will allow us some time between now and then to get ducks in a row, to have a meeting, to answer some of these questions, and then hopefully get them an answer before too late into November.
Am I able to ask? Oh, sorry.
Would it make the committee more comfortable if you knew that no alcohol was going to leave the confined area that's designated as a bar, the bar and the patio, so that it would not be served beyond those walls, and no one could come in with any beverages, no one could leave that designated area with any alcohol, and that would, for passing the bill tonight or passing the license tonight, we're just in that confined space.
Yeah, that was my other suggestion. I think, I mean, there certainly is a defined enough space, and that would be sort of similar to the Garver feed mill sort of model. And if the licensee preferred that might give us more time, even more time to sort out the rest. But I guess I leave that to whether that's the licensee's preference and whether that was the committee's preference. But that was my other idea of how to move forward, and then continue the discussion of how to exactly do the rest. But
I think that again, I don't want to interrupt the motion. I would be supportive of the motion, because I think we could always do that at the special meeting. If we go and see it and the committee's like, we think a smaller premises makes sense, we can just do it at a special meeting. That would be easy to do. It wouldn't be difficult. And if we do defer to a special committee meeting, and the tour goes, as we would see it well, right? And you guys are comfortable with doing the whole space, that would be the ultimate best outcome for us. So I think deferring, while we would be grateful for a full approval tonight, we would certainly be fine with deferring and doing a tour, getting you again exactly what information you want, giving Matt some time. We would be okay with that.
Okay, I will not make an amendment to my motion. I will leave it as it stands.
And I will second that, because we could handle the smaller premises at a special meeting. I agree.
Okay. All right. I realize that's asking a lot for staff, so I appreciate you allowing us to do that. But all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
And I do believe we've lost Jeffrey, so it's just the two of us, Jen.
No problem.
All right. Thank you all for your time. I'm really excited to see this. It's been a long time. I think we're excited that this is moving forward and there's something going into that space. And I apologize that we couldn't give you a clear answer tonight, but hopefully we can find something that works for everybody.
That is okay. It has been a long time coming. The space looks great. I guess in terms of, did you want to, guys, we don't have to find out dates and times right now. Did you want to try to schedule a tour for the committee? We could, and I don't know if this would be odd, or I don't want to put staff out by any means. I mean, we could have the meeting at the market, to be honest. The special meeting, because you can see the space and you can make a decision there. Or if you'd rather see the space, reflect, and then make a decision, we would totally understand that as well.
I'll get in touch when we'll figure out details.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We will have to notice it. We will have to notice it anyway. Yep. So yeah.
And Matt, let me know if you need anything from a legal perspective, or if it's just a matter of just time and just want to think about it. Or if you want to, you know, if there's going to be a motion at that meeting, if you want to talk about language or what the condition language
Sure.
might look like, happy to do
Okay.
so.
Yeah, sounds good.
Perfect.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so
all.
much, appreciate it.
All right, moving on to, we're going to take agenda items 2, 3, and 4, if I may, because they are all for the same event, even though they have been submitted by 2 separate parties. We have the application for a special event permit by Downtown Middleton Business Association, Andrea Van Nest, contact person, for the Spooky Stroll on October 27th, 2023 in downtown Middleton. An application for a special event permit by the City of Middleton, Melissa Brum, for the same event at Stonehorse Green, and an application for an outdoor amplified sound permit by Melissa Brum for the City of Middleton for this band and sound system for 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. on October 27th for the Spooky Stroll. Thank you for your patience, Andrea, and for hanging on to the call. I think, Laura, do you have any details or anything to add from the applications that are in the packet?
Not really. And I mean, this is unique that we had, you know, well, not so much the amplified sound, but two separate special event permits for the same. But I mean, they are being kind of, it's the whole entire event is being hosted together, but there are separate like parts of the event itself, and both of them hold insurance separately. So I wanted to kind of separate it that way. But yeah, I mean, it's just the annual trick-or-treating portion, 3 to 5. And then this year they are adding in more programming at Stonehorse Green. So pumpkin decorating from 4 to 6, the costume parade, which is going to stay within Stonehorse Green from 5 to 5:15, and then live music from 5:15 to 6:30. But yeah, no, other than that, and obviously Andrew's on the call if there's questions, but it has been reviewed by our team with the city and no issues.
Great. And I saw street closures for Hubbard and Aurora, and then maybe a request for police help for street crossings.
Yeah, and what we've done in the past at downtown trick or treating was actually usually get our volunteers to help out just to get kids across Parmenter and the Elmwood intersections. Generally speaking, it's an event for younger kids, so parents or some adult are with them anyway, but just to help that area.
Perfect. Great. All right. Well, if there's any, Andrea, is there anything else you want to add or anything else you want to make us aware of before we move
We're
forward?
just excited to have this new collaboration. I think I'm freezing up here. We're excited. It's a new way to do this, and I'm here for any questions, but Laura just handled it well, and I think we're pretty well set.
Great. Sounds great. All right. Well, I will make a motion then to approve the application for a special event permit by Downtown Middleton for Spooky Stroll, as well as a motion to approve the application for the special event permit by the City of Middleton at Stonehorse Green for Spooky Stroll, and the application for the outdoor amplified sound permit by the City of Middleton for the band and sound system on October 27th at 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. for the Spooky Stroll.
And I will second the motion to approve all 3 permits for the same collaborative event. And I don't have an amendment, but just a comment that I appreciate that Stonehorse Green is available for those activities with the kiddos to get some of, to increase safety and get them away from the roads. So.
And having a gathering space like that is great.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor of the motions, say aye. Aye. All right, they approve. Good luck. We'll keep our fingers crossed for good weather. Thanks, Andrea. All right, next we have items 5 and 6. We'll take those together because they are for the same event. This is an application for a special event permit submitted by Todd Carroll for Todd and Alicia's wedding on May 18th, 2024 at Lakeview Park. And then there's an application for an outdoor amplified sound permit by the same person. At their address is listed as 4758 West Maple Leaf Circle of Greenfield, Wisconsin for sound system announcements and a DJ from 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. May 18th, 2024 for Todd and Alicia's wedding.
Yeah, and so this is just kind of your basic wedding reception at Lakeview. They are planning to have their ceremony outside by the gazebo. They have a DJ planned for the shelter, and they are aware that, 10 p.m. is cutoff. That's when the park closes, and they're going to tell their DJ the decibel limit and just be respectful of all of the residents that aren't nearby. So, yeah, but other than that, that's pretty much it.
I have one question though, just where I think it's more of the form thing and just wanting to make sure that we're covering everything that needs to be covered. And I think this happens in the next agenda item as well, where they indicate that alcohol will be sold and served, and then it does require that they file that picnic license. Is that something that we see like at a later date when they've, since it's not here with the special event and the amplified sound?
So for something like this, and anyone feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, since it's invite only and they are serving the alcohol but they're not charging for it, the temp B license would not be required.
Oh, okay.
Is that?
Yeah, and that the question is really open. It says sold, served, or consumed. So the sale is where it's where you need temp B for it. So it'd be like having a party at your own house. You can give alcohol away and not have to have a license for it. Does that make sense?
Even at the park, you can do that? You don't have to have a
Matt,
picnic license?
You look like you want to talk. Nope, you're muted, Matt.
I'm muted.
This is like year 4 of Zoom and we're still.
No, yeah, you don't have to have if you just have, you rent a shelter, for instance, and you're having a private party, you can bring alcohol and you can distribute to people that are invitees, as long as, people aren't paying something on the side, or, members of the general public. So, but it's basically either sale or giving out to members of the public are kind of the things that really will trigger the need for an alcohol license. And if neither of those things are happening.
So even if their caterer had like a licensed bartender with them, it's that they're giving it out that makes the distinction.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
it's not open to the
and the new wedding barn laws don't apply here whatsoever.
Well, they're not adopted yet either. So
right, there's not rules around them, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think that would affect this either. Thank
you.
To your point, I mean, that question is kind of, because it doesn't really spell out in the question. They don't have to answer. It's a yes or no. So I can work maybe with Lori to kind of specify that, because obviously it's sold is what kind of will trigger the temp fee.
I also, the 2 other things that I noticed is they don't have it rented yet. They don't have the shelter rented yet. Is that something that they get this first and then they get the rental for the shelter, or?
No, they do have the shelter.
Their form indicated that they didn't.
Oh, their application did?
Yeah, so maybe they've gotten it.
I think they may have done it since they submitted this to me. Yeah, but yeah, I have confirmed they have the shelter and even the gazebo too.
Oh, okay. Because that was my other, because I did see the shelter but not the gazebo, so I'm glad that you confirmed that. And then my other concern was the size of the event. They indicated parking for 100, and I was like, oh dear, that's gonna be, maybe it's early enough in the year the park won't be as busy.
Yeah, you're right though. That is a lot. And that might be something I'd check in with Parks and Rec to just see like if they would recommend for those larger events, if they would do some sort of park and ride option somewhere nearby.
That's a good idea. Hey, we could use the trolley.
Yeah.
I am writing a note. Okay. And I'm sure it's one of those things they won't know numbers until closer, but I'm impressed they have their ducks in the row so early. So I will go ahead and make a motion that we approve the special event permit and the outdoor amplified sound permit for Todd and Alicia's wedding on May 18th, 2024. The sound permit will be for 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. and Todd Carroll is the contact person.
And I will second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. moving on. And we will take, oh, yeah, this one's alone. Number 7, application for a special event permit by Middleton Hills Neighborhood Association, Stephanie Conwell, contact person for the Middleton Hills Halloween Parade on October 31st, 2023 in Middleton Hills neighborhood.
This is just their annual neighborhood parade. It functions identical to their 4th of July parade. It's fairly small and brief. And they do request a police escort if it's available. They know it's not guaranteed. Yeah, and the only other thing, I think we have this as a discussion later in the agenda. That would just be my only thing to mention here is that whether we're going to kind of still require this or, yeah.
Yep. All right. Any concerns from public safety?
None whatsoever. It's like Laura said, same thing. We get there if we can, and we hand candy out to the kids. So good event.
I appreciate that you guys do that because I know things are tight. All right, I will make a motion that we approve the application for the special event permit submitted by Middleton Hills Neighborhood Association for the Middleton Hills Halloween Parade on October 31st.
I will second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Next, we're going to take 8 and 9 together. These are the applications for a special event permit by Race Day Events LLC, Garrett Wilson, contact person for the 2024 Fleet Feet New Year's Day Dash on January 1st, 2024 at Cuba Sports Center, and an application for an outdoor amplified sound permit submitted by the same for the same event for speeches, announcements, and a DJ 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. January 1st, 2024. This is all to take place at Cuba Sports.
Yep, and again, it's an annual event that really has not changed anything from previous years. And our team has reviewed everything. I don't think there's any concerns or issues from what's being proposed. So
Great. Any concerns from public safety?
Nope, same event, same route. We have a couple of cops signed, and it's been a good event in the past.
Great. All right, I will make an emotion then that we approve both the application for the special event permit and the application for an outdoor amplified sound permit submitted by Garrett Wilson for Race Day Events for the 2024 Fleet Feet New Year's Day Dash on January 1st, 2024.
And I will second that motion.
Excellent. All in favor? Aye. Oh, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to ordinances. An ordinance to allow for longer street closures for special events for certain downtown streets.
So yeah, we discussed this at the last meeting, and my notes weren't as good as I hoped, but I think I captured closely what it is we wanted, but I guess the committee will tell me whether that is right, whether I've got too much, too little.
I guess that makes sense on the Terrace Avenue. I don't know that I would probably have gone all the way to Parmenter. But
I
you're
thought
right.
about it too, yeah.
But I think the festival grounds is just considered that one little part. And also I know that there was some consternation during the art walk when people couldn't get to their apartments. So if you can get from Parmenter at least into some part of Terrace Avenue, that makes it easier on people.
Well, and it didn't look like Aurora was necessarily the most sensible point, but I didn't really have the wherewithal to get an accurate measurement. I mean, I figured either it was going to go all the way to Parmenter Street or, just past the thing.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, but Aurora.
The festival area.
The festival area, okay.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure. It's just like that red pavement on Terrace Avenue.
Right.
My question is I understand that putting it here, but should we also, is there any reason to add something to the Stone Horse Green ordinance part about it, or is that just making it too convoluted.
Well, I mean, it's certainly not necessary because there's
Okay.
nothing in there that, I mean, this is the only place that we were running into it, not realizing it until a few times a little too late, but nonetheless, this was the only part that was, keeping us from having these extended hours and on these locations. So I think this is sufficient to have it just in this section.
So my question would be, so I think that the second portion of Terrace Avenue between North High Point Road and Aurora Street, Alder Wilkes, are you saying Aurora Street's too far down?
You mean too far to the west or east? When you mean it's too far east?
I'm not sure.
So it would close from North High Point
Yep.
to, so I'm looking at it, right? So North High Point, so this is North High Point Terrace, Parmenter's over here. So I think leaving the portion from Parmenter to Terrace open allows traffic to at least get some portion down Terrace, and so people in those apartments can at least access part of, I think there's an underground garage entrance before Aurora.
Well, and of course, we don't necessarily have to approve closures all the way to Aurora. It just means that that's a section that we can approve.
Okay.
All day closures. That's why I finally stopped wringing my hands over it and just picked Aurora.
Yeah.
So that piece is a little more clear. Wondering if we want to clarify that it's Hubbard Avenue, but it's like the portion around, I mean, you have immediately adjacent to Stornhurst Green, but it's Parmenter to Elmwood is my understanding, correct?
Well,
Yeah,
is that all
That's all that I thought has been closed for
well,
things
it's
that-
Hubbard, but I mean, I thought that part of that, let me see the language I use. I thought that part of that, somewhere in the curve there, I thought that is, the western north-south part, that is Aurora.
Yeah,
It is.
Oh, at the corner. Okay,
Yep.
so I'm wondering
Yeah.
though. if we wanna make-
Although I guess as I sit here, I mean, I realize now that there is gonna be, the way I worded this, the closure won't include the
Aurora.
area in front of like the Village Green, and it only goes, to the part
Oh,
that
you
is
mean
immediately
just
adjacent
around the
to.
park? Oh, yeah. No, I
Right,
should-
so we'd
yeah.
want that all the way to Parmenter Street. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so I think the eastern bound is Parmenter and the northern bound is Elmwood. And so then it would be Hubbard Avenue turning into Aurora,
Yeah,
bound by
including-
Elmwood and Parmenter.
Yeah, okay, so. Yeah, how do we? That's kind of a weird.
Touchdown, yeah.
Um.
Because that
Could
part
you-
of Aurora
Maybe-
north of Elmwood doesn't need to be closed.
Right, so maybe I just have to back off and say the Aurora Street and just say between Elmwood and Hubbard Avenue, and then Hubbard Avenue between Aurora and Parmenter.
Yep. That works.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I hadn't thought of that, so. Let's say not
Okay.
including, yeah, I'd say not including Harbor, yeah, and just as I stated that. So does the committee want to approve that with that change, or do we want to actually see?
I think if you
actual
could,
language
if
come
you have-
back.
if you have language, if you could read it back, maybe?
Yeah, let me actually. So not including Hubbard Avenue between Parmenter Street and Aurora Street. Comma, Aurora Street between Elmwood. I lost the screen with my map.
Yeah, Elmwood and Hubbard.
Elmwood Avenue, right?
Yeah.
Avenue. Okay, so it'd be not including Hubbard Avenue between Parmenter Street and Aurora Street, comma, Aurora Street between Elmwood Avenue and Hubbard Avenue, or Terrace Avenue between North High Point Road and Aurora Street.
And that should be and, not or, right?
Well, it's not in,
No, it'd be or, including those.
Not
including, yeah.
Hubbard Avenue.
Yeah, I think it's or.
Okay, because in the current version you have and.
Yeah.
And I would want to leave in the immediately adjacent to Stonehurst Green language because yeah.
Well, I'm afraid that because you have the area though, that might reintroduce some ambiguity because we don't, because then it won't, do we really want to extend to Parmenter Street or not? So I think we have to cut the adjacent to Stonehorse Marine out. Even though that's, I mean, certainly as a reader, it focuses you in the area much quicker, but I think it introduces a unwanted ambiguity.
Yeah. All right, I will make a motion then that we approve the change to the ordinance. 717.8K3 to read as Matt has worked on. That will not include the areas Aurora Street, Elmwood to Hubbard, Hubbard at Aurora to Parmenter, and then Terrace between North High Point and Aurora Street. I will make a motion for the approval of the ordinance.
And I will second that.
Actually, I will make a motion that we present to Common Council these changes. Sorry.
And I will second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
All right. Number 2, an ordinance to update section 3.01 regarding the budget process.
Yeah, so these are all changes that were recommended by Bill Burns. It's just kind of an updating to more closely follow what our actual process is. And it's consistent with statute.
Great. We did talk about this very briefly at finance. So it wasn't referred to us by finance, but I knew it was coming. I think it looks good. Any questions, Jen?
Yeah, I have just one question about section 3. And I think that in the first paragraph, the change from finance committee to city administration, just wanting to make sure, and I think this is also in, it's also in section 2. Is city administration defined elsewhere, or do we need to make clear like what the intent of that is? I think city administrator is very clear.
Yeah, I kind of hemmed and hawed over that myself a little bit. I mean, yeah, it's not as immediately precise, but I think the intent was that was going to involve both Bill and Brian, and why that was the language they chose. And I mean, on the one hand, it's not as precise as I'd maybe like it, but I also don't think it necessarily is so imprecise that, you know, nobody knows who we're talking about. So I didn't find a real good way or reason to push back on them about that language, but
I wonder that, right, that others may be involved in the interpretation of city administration,
yeah.
but if we want to make clear it's at a minimum the city administrator and the budget director or the finance director.
Well, and I mean, I think that would be I mean, that's who I assume that we are talking about is the city administrator and director of finance. And I mean, I'd be comfortable making that change. I mean, I guess we can hear from Brian and Bill if there was some other. It's certainly not a dramatic change to the ordinance. I think there's at least, is that the only section where that is?
Yeah, I believe so. Like administrator or designee is above, and so designee.
Yeah, that's a different.
That there's some explicit permission there, whereas.
Yeah, I'll just run a quick
maybe
search.
ambiguous.
Yeah, maybe that is the only place. So
In section 2 and section 3.
Would there be any reason that any HR director or any of the other directors would be a part of that city administration? Like by clarifying that it's only the city administrator and the finance director, does that limit?
Well, no, I mean, the city administrator and finance director and the mayor they can involve anyone else whose input they want to. I mean, I think it's important to make sure that certain people are involved, but I don't think that necessarily limits involvement. It just means that these are the minimum of the people that should be involved at this stage of the game. And so, yeah, I see that we've got that in 2 and 3. So I could change that to the mayor, city administrator, and director of finance.
I mean, would it hurt to include also then, you know, the clause that any other city administrator or city administration staff as I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's sufficiently implied. I don't know. If it were entirely up to me, no, I don't see it. I don't think it limits us to not have that language.
Would you feel more comfortable if it was changed, Jen?
I would just you never know, a rogue department director.
Yeah, I'm part of administration, so I get to, yeah, no, that's
yeah, exactly.
unlikely, but yeah, no, that's.
I mean, others can be involved, but I think that at a minimum, right, that it needs to be coming from those folks, because finance committee is very specific parameter. So.
Right. Okay, so. Okay, I will make that change in both these spots.
And I think maybe it just read awkward for me to have it be mayor, very specific, and then not quite so specific.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I mean, I had the same vibe that you did. You're definitely not alone in that feeling. So.
All right. Any other comments or changes?
The rest look good to me. Yeah.
All right, do you want to make a motion then with the change that you?
Sure. So I will move to approve to refer to Common Council the updates to ordinance section 3.01 as prepared by Matt, with the change in section 2 first sentence, and in section 3 first sentence from city administration to city administrator and director of budget, or budget director, whatever his
Director of-
title is.
Fine.
Director of Finance.
Director of Finance. Yep.
Bill's title. All right, I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Moving on, the first miscellaneous item is continued discussion from the July 11th, 2023 LNO meeting on the requirements for neighborhoods to obtain a special event permit for 4th of July parades. In the interest of time, because you all have lives, can we defer this? Or Laura, do you want to do this now? So you, figuring the next 4th of July is several months off, I think we can defer.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, yeah, because we're good to go with this Halloween one, so we can make that call, as it gets closer to 4th of July.
That sounds great. We'll put a pin in it, and maybe after the first of the year. Does that help?
Yeah, that sounds good. Because yeah, I usually don't get those applications till June if I'm lucky. So
Yeah. All right, sounds great. Thank you.
You need
Moving
a
on.
motion to defer.
Oh, sorry. I will make a motion to defer the continued discussion of the 4th of July parades to after the new year.
And I will second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to discussion of the consolidation of the personnel and finance committees. This was actually referred to us by finance and personnel back in June at a finance meeting that I was not at, unfortunately. And I don't think you were at the personnel one, Jen. So this has sort of was referred a while ago, and it's now on our agenda. And oh, go ahead, Matt.
Well, I see we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to try to cut to the chase as quickly as I can. Basically, all that I found, it seems like the main there's two motivating factors to this, as far as I can tell. One, we've got a strategic plan that says, hey, we've got a lot of committees. You probably should look at them and see whether we really need them all, to paraphrase. And then the other is the notice that more often than not, personnel and finance meet together. And so, looking at that, looking at, examples for other communities, there's really not a wrong answer here. I think there is, I think the idea between having separate ones is that there are functions, like disciplinary things and those type of things that personnel, not often, but occasionally has to do. And I think the reason why some places have them separate is that at least gives sort of the appearance that those sort of things in hearings are separate from finance. So there's not really but how much that perception really exists or anything, who knows? Because it's just as common that there are other places that have these things combined. The main purpose of these standing committees is to give council members, and these are council specific committees only made up of council members, to kind of share the division of labor on certain things and take a deeper dive into certain issues so that the whole council does not have to roll up its sleeves and can kind of follow what the committees have done. And so, I think that can happen either way with two committees or just one committee. But one thing that means is that I don't think it makes any sense to have a committee that's larger. Even a 5-person committee is a lot. So I would think if we're going to have only one committee do both of these, what I would suggest is first we've got to pick what the number is. I'm a little uncomfortable with an even number on finance to also now, which is the number on finance, to deal with situations where they may have to be votes taken, where there's, the personnel committee is actually recommending things where it might be contentious or having sort of due process sorts of hearings. It's, the mayor could, I suppose, the mayor's the potential officer, so you could, maybe have some language that says you have a 4-person committee, and if you have hearings where, the mayor can break tie votes, there is a possibility. Either way, I wouldn't have any of these changes happen until this next spring. Because right now you've got people assigned to things. At least in theory, there's a division of labor that already exists, and all of a sudden just cut people, dump the personnel committee and now just the finance. It seems to make sense whichever way we go, that any ordinance we would adopt would take effect for the appointments coming this next spring, which also buys us a little time to maybe think about these finer points. Do we have a 3-person, 4-person, or 5-person committee, or do we work the mayor in somewhat in those ways? But otherwise, I just don't think there's, we wring our hands a lot, but since no one is saying that, this is working so poorly, or this, I just don't think that there's really a wrong answer to how we do it. I mean, and we could certainly go on with what we're doing now too. So, well,
and I think the timing of it has always been something that's on my mind, because it was sort of like, well, we can't do it now. We're in the middle of the budget season. We need some time to figure out what we want things to look like. And I think you're right, Matt. I think making it at the turnover, when committees get reassigned or reallocated in April after the next election, I think that makes the most sense. So I agree with you. And I think it's also good that we started this discussion of, about the time that a committee's got appointed this last time in April. And now we're going to have a year when we can look back and be like, well, how many times did personnel meet? Did they ever meet without finance? We've had a whole year now. We've been considering this. Let's look at what actually happened in the work of those committees over the last year. And does this make sense? And so I think it's a good idea that we're starting this discussion now. I personally don't think we need to take any action on it. I know there's been pressure from other people on council that really want something to happen. I think it's because it was such a goal of the council to really look at these committees. And I appreciate the desire to want something to happen. But I think the timing of the appointment of the committees is something to consider, and the fact that we're going to have a whole year of information to draw from. I think we can start thinking about it now and then take action come February, March, April, as far as rewriting the ordinance, because it is going to take a change. So yeah. I think if we start thinking about it now and maybe have this appear on the agenda as a further discussion item as we think about things, or touch base, maybe it goes, just once it's a recurring agenda item for us just to touch base and be like, this is what we're thinking, this is where we're at, this is the timeline that we're still looking at, so that we keep nudging it forward so we're ready by April, because I don't want it to get lost in the ether by just saying, well, we discussed it, we're going to think about it, and then not have something to drive us forward. So I would like to see it appear on the agendas going forward as a miscellaneous item, but that we don't really need to really, just kind of make it a something that we're all thinking about and discussing and looking into. Does that make sense? Matt, is that enough form for you, or do you need more like?
Well, I think so. I mean, I mean, right now, I don't think we really necessarily need any form. I don't think I'm at the stage of drafting anything. We just need to know what's going to work for us. And, I laid out sort of the things I think you need to think about, but, again, I don't know how much hand wringing is worth having over it unless somebody's really telling us this is broken. But if people just think, hey, it's too many committees, or we've got, council members on so many other things that cutting this down, it would be really helpful. Then it's just a matter of, okay, well, we're going to have a finance and personnel committee. How many members do you want on it? I mean, it's got to be something smaller than 7, all but one of the council. And then I think also just considering whether we need to build something in to have an odd number in case, votes really matter on certain things like any hearings and disciplinary stuff.
I have a couple of thoughts, and I agree, Alder Wokus, that starting this discussion, making sure that the timing aligns with a change to council, like potential council membership and committee assignments. And looking at so far my participation as part of the personnel committee, we've only ever met jointly with finance. But there's that flexibility of personnel being called to have a meeting as needed and not a standing meeting. And so that does make sense for that. I think there is the potential that if we did leave personnel as its own committee, I think I have two kind of flags on that, is like we run into the same kind of challenge with the size and walking quorum issues with it being a 3 council member committee. So there may be some motivation or even rationale for the combined effort. I also see on the flip that you also maybe want the flexibility of having personnel not have to always meet with finance to handle personnel matters that aren't necessarily financially impactful, particularly like discipline, until which time a finance discussion needs to happen about that. I think that, and my understanding is that disciplinary items have not always come to the personnel committee as maybe they should have. And so if we wanted to make some clarity around that, making sure that personnel is convened and obviously depending on what we decide to do with the structure, but making sure they are convened and brought into the discussion and issues of disciplinary action. So yeah, I guess that's my only flag for like the idea of keeping it separate and apart. But
Okay. Well, I think we're at a spot then that we can really start thinking about it and keep on moving it forward. And we'll just, again, if everyone's okay with that we'll just, maybe I'll just touch base with you, Matt, once, like when the agendas come out before the next LNO, and just be like, do we want to put this on? Do we want to hold it for the next month? Maybe we'll just do that instead of just having it as a recurring item. We'll just
Okay.
touch base every once in a while on it, and we'll just see if we need to include it.
Sure.
Okay. All right. And that is the end of our agenda. Unless there's any other discussion on that topic. All right, then I will call this meeting to a close and we stand adjourned.
All right.
All
Have a
right,
good night.
everybody. Jeremy, Tyler, I promise you they're not always this long.
He's like, is it always like that? No.
No, this was a doozy. This
Yeah.
was a doozy.
It's a
Yeah.
good